Welcome, Wargamers. Today we are continuing our series on the star collecting boxes for Age of Sigmar, and today we're taking a look at the Seraphon. Alright, the Seraphon star collecting box comes with 1 Old Blood on a Carnosaur, 8 Saurus Knights, and 12 Saurus Warriors. Okay, so right off the bat we have some initial thoughts when you're looking at the box. It's important to remember, if you are playing with the General's Handbook Matched Play, that Saurus Warriors are bought in units of 10, so you'll have 2 extra, and Saurus Knights are bought in increments of 5, so you have 3 extra there. And if you're playing in narrative play or whatever, nobody really cares, so skip that. Going to briefly go over the units in the box. This will be pretty quick because there's only 3, but we're going to have a really good discussion about which variation of the Carnosaur you want to be building. So let's start off with the Warriors, though. Alright, so your basic Saurus Warrior is actually a phenomenal value for what it gets in terms of the synergy it brings to the army. You get 3 attacks, so you have the 2 with the weapon, and one of them is just a biter. He literally just bites the enemy as he's stabbing it, which is kind of ridiculously awesome. Their shield, and they all have a shield, basically gets them ignore rend of 1, much like the Skeleton Warriors do, which is pretty cool, actually, which actually pairs really well with their next ability, which is that they get +1 to their save if they're near a Seraphon hero. I believe it's actually, it's a Seraphon hero, not a Saurus hero. So when you get down to a 3-up that ignores rend, it gets really, really cool. It's also important to note that like most things in the Seraphon army, these are summonable. Now, this gives you a lot of tactical flexibility in deployment and things like that mid-game. And they also have another cool ability, which is not similar to summoning, but in terms of like movement shenanigans, and that is they can do like a double time, which is they double their speed, but they can't run or charge or shoot or anything like that. It's kind of like running, but they just get to double their speed for a turn, which in this case makes it 10 inches. So for 10 inches, you can hustle to an objective if you need to do that, or get in somebody's face, block somebody else's path, things like that. You have a little bit of flexibility with the Warriors. These guys are really great as a anti-infantry. So by that I mean your common infantry is not going to have anything better than a -1 rend, so they can handle that. They get 3 attacks back at them, so they're going to chew through your enemies faster. They get a good save. So they are a great line troop, which is exactly what they are. Moving over to the Knights, you get kind of a lot of the same, actually. They do get an extra attack because now the dinosaur they're riding is biting at somebody. But beyond that, they also are summonable. They have the same double time ability, the same shield. The weapon options, if you take the lance, you get a bonus to do more damage if you charge, things like that. They're actually pretty, I don't want to use the word bland, but very straightforward as a cavalry unit. Not a lot of extra rules, nothing really unique about them. And those are kind of the 2 basic infantry units that you get. Notice there's not a lot going on under the hood. The Warriors definitely have a lot more going for them than the Knights. What we're going to see, though, as the Seraphon work, is they have a lot of cool synergy, particularly with spells and buffs and things like that. Remember, you can get the Warriors to a 2-up, ignoring rend of 1 save. So just keep those kinds of things in mind as you're going forward. We're going to start discussing the different kind of heroes that you can take with the Carnosaur kit. You really have 3 options. You have the Old Blood on a Carnosaur, the Scar Veteran on a Carnosaur, and the Troglodon. And if you go with the Troglodon, you can actually build an old one as a standalone dude. Now this actually has a ton of options. Each 3 of those is really, really cool. If you stick with what GW kind of promotes on the box, you get the Old Blood with the Carnosaur, which really, to be perfectly honest, does absolutely nothing for the army. He is kind of like a mega solo. He is a huge threat, a lot of wounds, a lot of damage. Both Carnosaur variants have this thing where, like, if I hit you with the claws twice, then I get a bonus when I do the jaw attack, meaning that, like, you're literally cracking into the enemy's face and biting into them. So it has a cool bunch of thematic stuff. The problem is a lot of the buffs that they have are really, really dependent on dice rolls. And the more dice rolls you include in those buffs, the less of a value that they are, because they're harder to achieve. Meaning, he doesn't do anything for the rest of the army. He only has buffs and rules for himself. So, in that sense, they better go off. And there's no guarantee that they will. I've played several games. My former roommate, he played Seraphon a lot. He never got the megabyte thing to go off because inevitably one of the claw attacks would miss. We're like, well, it's there, you're paying points for it, but it almost never happens. That being said, if you're looking for a giant distraction for your army, for your enemy, I mean, having this guy go out there and just like cover the right side of the field, right? Because if they ignore him, he's gonna mess some stuff up. If they deal with him, that's forces being pulled that way that are not being pinned against something more important in your army. And if you go with the Scar Veteran on a Carnosaur, the Carnosaur rolls are all the same thing. You get like the 2 claws and then the Mega Bite, stuff like that. His command ability, however, is definitely more army focused. Basically, it's you pick a unit, and every time that unit rolls 6s to hit, it does an extra attack. Now, this doesn't sound like a bunch of stuff, like a big deal. However, remember that both the Warriors and the Knights have multiple melee attacks that this will affect. Meaning, if you put it on the Saurus Knights, and they attack with the Lance, right? 6 to hit, boom, another attack. But that also applies to the Bite and the Carnosaur's Bite. So you get 3 chances per dude for those 6s to add up. And it can accumulate into quite a few bonus attacks. And that's really kind of the key difference, is that he offers that command ability which buffs the army as it is, whereas the other one, the Old Blood, really is kind of just like a a one-man wrecking crew. But now there's the third option that I want to explore here, one that's not kind of expressly promoted on the box, and that is building a Troglodon, which has a little skink on top, and building an Old Blood by himself. Now this is actually a incredibly interesting combination because you see the Troglodon is a lot like the Old Blood on a Carnosaur, where it's very him focused. He doesn't buff anyone else, it's all about him and his attacks. He makes a great distraction, just like the first one did. But you're not missing out on a hero option that buffs your army. Troglodon basically has a gun. He spits acid and junk like that, and whoever he spits at, he gets plus 3 inches on the charge to attack. So you can make it upfield really quickly. You can be very aggressive with him without threatening your general, which is really an asset to you. It is important to note that he does not have the keywords necessary to trigger the +1 save modifier on the Warriors. Just keep that in mind when you're positioning him. Now, if you do that, you also get the ability to build the Old Blood, who would have been standing on the Carnosaur in the first, for the first option. Now, here's the cool thing. This is actually one of my favorite on-foot heroes available. He actually has a lot of wounds, okay? He's pretty beefy for being a ground commander general guy. Now, he has 2 things that make him really, really unique. One is everyone around 5 inches, every Seraphon dude, gets to re-roll, I believe it's hit? No, sorry. 1s to wound around him. So you get the guys who, again, multiple attacks, they can all re-roll the 1s to wound. So it's a little buff, it's a little thing, but it's a fun thing, okay? Because it pairs well with his command ability, which is you pick a unit, and everyone reforms around one guy from that unit. So if you pick, say you have your knights kind of spread far forward, right? You pick the first knight, the one who's furthest up the board, everyone gets 3 inches to reform around him. So you can actually bring units closer to combat. You can help break them away from combat. You can kind of shimmy. You can do all kinds of movement shenanigans with that. There are actually a lot of ways to abuse extra movement in this game, especially when it's out of phase, things like that. So combined, I just feel like he does the most for the army. He gives you a small buff. He's a small dude, he's not a big guy. He's a small buff and some cool shenanigans to work with him. You also get the maximum number of war scrolls from doing that option, right? You get a big monster just like you had before, you get 2 units with the Warriors and the Knights, and then you get a cool boss to walk with the Warriors. So if you just bought this, my personal recommendation is do the Warriors, the Knights, Troglodon, and the Old Blood standing by himself. If you built it any other way, they're all great ways to build it. And plus, they're all really beautiful models. So don't feel bad. You didn't make a bad choice. I'm just saying that in terms of getting the most bang for your buck from this specific box, if it's your first one, that's what I would suggest. What's cool is that you buying multiples of this box, because of the fact that the hero, the big model, is a multi-kit, it's not a waste of money. If you bought 2 of these, you would have a great set of Warriors, 20. You would have, what, 16 Knights, so you could do 3 units, right? 8, 16, yes, yeah. Not crazy. And so you would have options to do that. You would do, you could do multiples of those different things. You could build, 2 giant Troglodons, both spitting and charging. You can do all kinds of stuff. So there is a lot of versatility in this box. So don't worry if you built something that's a little bit different than what we just talked about. Now, I'm frequently asked where to go next with purchases. For the Seraphon, I can't stress this enough. You're gonna want to invest in some wizards. Anything that has the wizard keyword, basically. I always suggest a Slán just because it's so iconic to the army and it's very narrative-y and stuff like that. If you really want to be serious about it, get a Slán and a Balewind Vortex, because that combination is nasty, okay? The Balewind Vortex is so dang good right now. It's just ridiculous. So what I would say is get a Slán, because that way you're unlocking the ultimate potential of your army, which is the set comes with nothing to summon. Like, you can't summon anything because you don't have a wizard, but everything is summonable. So when you buy the wizard for the first time and you start using that ability, it gives you one more option, one more piece of value to your army that you're now using that you weren't before. So keep that in mind, that even no matter how best you build the box that you get, it's limited in the sense that you're paying for the ability to summon things without actually being able to summon them. So getting a wizard is definitely going to be high on your priority list so you can really get the most of the units that you already own. If you haven't checked out our lore video where we went over the Seraphon, go ahead and click up here and check that out. It's a great time. It's one of the more popular videos on the channel, and people seem to really enjoy it. So they're a cool army. They're so beautiful and iconic. I really do hope that GW kind of revisits them a little bit with a little more updated and a fresh eye on the fluff that they've had recently. And I think it's a great starting point. A lot of people have kind of poo-pooed this set just because it can be considered kind of bland, just very basic troops that don't synergize terribly well. But here's the thing, they're building blocks of a larger thing. Once you start introducing wizards, things really ramp up quickly and you see some really awesome units come to the forefront. I hope this video has been helpful to you. If you would, go ahead and down here and click subscribe. Thank you so much for watching. I hope to see you in the next time, and happy wargaming.